Okay, so good morning, everybody. Today, since this is our, I don't know, let's call it the last session of the cycle, because next time when we meet, we go into high holiday liturgy. Okay, we covered the weekday, we covered Shabbat, we covered Shalosh Regalim, and last week was kind of an overview about main concepts and kind of structure of the tefillot and all the kind of stuff, which is super important in order to understand when we go to the high holidays, because that's going to be the advanced material. This is where we move away from the structure and all that kind of stuff. But today, as a kind of a concluding part for that, and it's actually a nice intro to the high holiday, I want to talk about something that is a lot on my mind, something that I've been grappling with for a long time. And that is, where am I, us, each one of us, in this thing that's called tefillah? Okay, we've been discussing, we're learning about structure and themes and words and what we do and blah, blah, blah. I'm not talking about the halachot, the how to do that stuff. That's different shiurim. There's plenty of classes and material out there. Actually, 99% of the material about tefillah is how to. What should you do? Can you talk? Can you this? Can you this? Stand, sit, do this, don't do this. Say it in this time, not in this time. I'm not dealing with that. What we're trying to do is to understand what we're saying and try to give meaning to that. If you remember, my methodology is, okay, we understand the theological idea, we understand what what's going on here. What does it require from me? What does it require from me? What am I supposed to think about? Like, why it matters to me, right? And we discussed that, I think, in the past year or so of classes. Last week, we started with this idea of, the classic question from the Talmud: what is the source for tefillah, right? And we kind of decided, the Talmud already decided, that it's both the avot, the patriarchs, and the korbanot, right? So some of the stuff, the concept comes from the avot, however, the practicality comes from the korbanot. Very, very generally speaking. And we mentioned that this idea of tefillah, I'm not so sure that we spoke about that last week, but I mentioned that many times, is a personal experience. When I do it, I don't do it for God. I do it for myself. I think I mentioned that many times. It's in a reflexive mode, right? That's the way lehit lavesh. I put on the clothes on myself. Lehit rachetz, that means I shower myself. Therefore, lehit palel, I'm going through that root, that word of palal, which is self-examination. Yearning through self-examination. It's not so much of a mystery. The idea is I need to go through that process in order to understand what really important, what really matters. Okay? That's basically, so God knows what's important for me. God knows what in my mind, blah, blah, blah. I need to go through that process. And if that's the case, what is the level of authenticity that we have in our prayer? I'm going to say things today that probably should not be recorded. But I think that when we talk about the traditional prayer book, so sometimes we go out of our way to find meaning behind things and to make it relevant and all that kind of stuff. And that's beautiful. And we've been doing it for the last, whatever, year or two. But at some point, we need to step up and say, no, I need to change that. That text need to be altered somehow or removed or no longer relevant or updated. And we're going to go through a bunch of examples. And the idea behind that is, again, not all prayers are equal. Not all prayers are equal. However, I think that, and we come from a very, very traditional point of view. It's not that I'm saying, like in liberal circles, that, oh, that's okay, it's no longer relevant, let's rewrite that, let's do, that kind of stuff. I'm not doing that. I'm trying to stay as much as possible within the framework, within the traditional prayer book, find meaning, but sometimes I don't want to lose that ability. Sometimes in order to stay authentic, I need to make changes. Okay, let's start with a simple example that is not here in the page. Yeah.
You can your definition of authentic.
Yes.
Real.
It's part of my reality. Okay. Okay. Let's start with two examples. Okay, here we go. Everybody has the blue. Okay, good. So today we're decoring. I think I mentioned that before, but we're gonna do it again. We are on page. Okay, page 97. Page 97, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Fifth line from the bottom. One before that. Here, somewhere. That's okay, that's okay. She'll give me the other. Yeah, okay. Thank you. Okay, so this is the second bracha of the Shema. This is the bracha just before the Shema. We discussed that many times. We don't need to go through what's going on over there. Talks about our special relationship with God as a and through the Torah, etc. And we're getting ready to say the Shema. Fine. Look at that line. Va'avienu l'shalom. Okay, we say Va'avienu l'shalom, bring us back in peace. I'm looking at the English on page 96, kind of like the last paragraph, so to say, like after the small font. Bring us back in peace from the four quarters of the earth, and lead us upright to our land. Any problem?
Yes,
What?
we're already there,
Okay, so
We've
we
been led.
here in Beverly Hills are not there,
but we've
but
been led there.
we've been led there. And not only that, I grew up in Israel. So for me to say that, I'm saying, like, that's not my, I live in Israel. My grandparents immigrated to Israel. My parents were born in Israel. We are in our land. I don't need to be to be led to our land. I'm already in the land. That is type of dissonance
But
that
only for people in Israel.
I get it. I'm telling you what I've experienced when I lived there growing up. How can I say that? So I guess, what's the big deal? It's like, is it whatever? Just like, we mumble. But I want us to be authentic and mean every word that we say. Yes.
Well, it says bring us back. It doesn't say bring me back. Number one, so the emphasis is the whole nation.
Excellent. Good. So some people say, okay, it's a collective, and until all the Jews are going to be in Israel, it's fine. We can continue saying that, and that's one approach. And if it resonates with you, go for it. But for me, the second part of the sentence, and lead us upright to our land, is the problem.
Yeah.
was at least the problem. Okay, lead us upright to our. I'm already left. So one of the suggestions, and that's it. So again, it's a tiny, tiny, tiny change. So some of the sidurim do that. And it says, "V'tolichenu komemiut." Right, look at the Hebrew. Instead of lamed, we replace the lamed with a bet. Be'artzenu, in our land.
Mhm.
And lead us upright in our land, instead of to our land. I know it sounds like tiny difference, and for most people, okay, they don't even pay attention to that stuff. But what I want us to develop is that sensitivity to what we say.
So we know the time and where we stay and where it's happening.
It's not only that. So whatever we say, we mean. We mean what we say.
Yeah, but if you are already in the land,
Correct.
then it's different.
Correct. Okay, so that's one example.
Although I feel with all the anti-Semitism,
Yeah,
we Jews don't feel komemiut. We feel downtrodden.
that's fine. That's what we ask God.
So
That's fine.
we're asking him to bring us to Israel proudly.
That's fine. And I'm not taking that away. I'm just saying for those who already live in Israel, maybe they should say Be'artzenu instead of Le'artzenu.
Unless they're talking about everybody.
Again, it's a matter of interpretation. And again, as I mentioned many times, I mentioned that tefillah is not Torah.
Right.
It's not the word of God, it's the word of people, unless we quote a pasuk. And therefore we can make changes. The question is how much you want to go. You want to, okay. Here, so that's one example, tiny example. I'll give you another example.
The word is a nuance.
Correct.
Isn't it like, on the Svivon for Hanukkah?
Okay.
Isn't that, it's a similar thing, right? It's like bow, like.
Sham or po.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly.
that's okay.
There as well, because of the word upright.
Upright is fine. I have no problem with that.
But I think
The problem is what to or in, for me at least. Again, you live here, so that's okay. But I'm saying, think about it if you're Israeli. No, I'm saying, look, so I'm suggesting, I'm not saying you have to. I'm saying it's a way. I want to open the door and say, hey guys, let's make it personal. Let's make it authentic. Let's really mean what we say. And that's okay if you want to say Le'artzenu and it fits whatever, it's fine. But don't be afraid of make those changes if you feel that this is the right thing to do. That's all I'm saying.
maybe it should be Levebe.
Okay, then we have a problem with grammar. Yes.
The in does not necessarily have to be geographic. We in Los Angeles have our hearts in Israel.
Great. That's what I'm saying. Again, every person is going to look at that from a different perspective. The idea is don't be afraid to make tiny changes. I'm not saying big or tiny, we'll get there in a second, but
Yeah.
changes that resonate with you. Okay? That's it. Let's take another example. Shabbat. Go to page 517. Bottom of the page. The Yikum Purkan. It's a blessing for the Kahal. Look, page 516, we're going to look at the English. May deliverance arise from heaven, bringing grace, love, and compassion, long life, ample sustenance, and heavenly help, physical health, and enlightenment in mind, living and thriving children who will neither interrupt nor cease from the words of the Torah to our masters and teachers of the holy communities in the land of Israel and Babylon.
And elsewhere it should be.
Today
So it's an Aramaic, so we don't really understand what we're saying. So that's okay.
Exactly.
We're just gonna say it.
I understand Bavel.
So for example, there are a lot of people who said like, no reason, just cut it out. Let's just cut it out.
The whole
Okay.
thing?
The whole thing, because you have another one. Look at
'Cause
the
it's
next
kinda
page.
Nice.
No, but you have looked at the next page. It talks about what?
Maybe the wood-
On the middle of
Oh, the
518.
same thing?
It's the same thing.
Yeah, so why?
It's
are we doing it
repetitive.
Twice.
Okay, so we don't need that. Theoretically, that's specifically to Bavel.
Oh,
Do we really need that? And especially in a place like Beth Jacob, for example, that we do say the prayer for the state, American government here,
mhm.
and to the prayer for the state of Israel, etc. So we do acknowledge that stuff, and we also acknowledge the fact that we live in the United States rather than in Bavel.
Right.
What do you do with that? So, more traditional approach would be something that Nehama said, okay, and elsewhere. More radical approaches said, like, we don't need it, just cut it out altogether. I'm not telling you what to do.
1 minute less.
You were not in Babel, ancient Babel,
Yeah,
but the United States in particular, Los Angeles and Hollywood, they even said Hollywood Babylon. I mean, there are hints that, that we're in a situation.
listen, if it's fine with you that to say Babylon, that's fine with, for me, it's a little bit,
Rock.
doesn't resonate with me so much, to be honest. I need something. Now, again, we're not talking about the Amidah, we're not talking about Shema, we're not talking about some core tefillot. And I think that we have the ability to make changes like
And
that.
why don't we make it in Hebrew? Why are we saying it in Aramaic? If nobody knows what we're
That's exactly. That's another discussion by itself. And again, the problem that, again, it's my personal view, take it or not. We are stagnant, we are stuck, we are not willing to make any changes. There's resistance to change, and that's a huge problem. Because when you refuse to acknowledge reality, you refuse to make changes just because it's different, then you become irrelevant. And we can talk about Judaism in general, but I'm not going to do that. We're going to deal with tefillah. I want to go into this, which is a couple of examples.
We make changes when it's convenient, like takanot.
Yeah, but I'm talking about, I want to say, you want to get me into trouble, especially I'm here on recording, but I want to stay specifically in tefillah. So, very, 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 very few places will recite this on Yom Ha'atzmaut. This is a Ala Nisim. So, as we know, Ala Nisim is a prayer that we recite on Purim and Chanukah, the two rabbinic holidays, not biblical, rabbinic holidays. So, Yom Ha'atzmaut depends on your hashkafa, depends on where you stand, depends on how you feel about the state of Israel, depends on whatever, your resistance to change, whatever, all that stuff, right? So what is the status of Yom Ha'atzmaut in your life? Now, I'm not going to tell you what to think and how, okay? Every rabbi, whatever, ask your local rabbi. But the point is, I'm just raising that as a question. Shouldn't we acknowledge that in the tefillah, just like Chanukah and Purim? Question mark. I'm not saying yes, I'm not saying no. Okay? There objection and then there so obviously, and by the way, this is not the only nusa. I just collected one sample for each. There are not tons, but there are a bunch of them out there. The question is, how resistant to change are you? So there are a couple of levels. When it comes to Yom Ha'atzmaut, for example, for the Tefillah of Yom Ha'atzmaut, there are a couple of levels. So, okay, one level is, yes, we might be even Zionist. However, we don't touch the Tefillah. The Tefillah is the Tefillah. That's it, finished. The fact that, you know, and therefore the Tefillah continues, whether it's going to be Mariv in the beginning of the day and then going to be Shachrit. And we do not acknowledge that, meaning we can talk about that. We can support Israel. There are plenty of ways to show that we're Zionist. We can put it on our Facebook. We can do whatever we want. But it doesn't mean that I'm going to change the tefillah that has been formulated for hundreds of years. And I'm going to change that because the state of Israel came established at 1948. That's one approach, yes. I'm not talking about the non-Zionists. Forget about them. I'm not dealing with them. Yes.
Those lines, like a day hasn't been established, but in recent months, days, we've seen amazing nisim. So at what point do you say, and what should we be saying?
What I'm saying is
It's
that
a related issue.
correct, but it again, it's the personal experience. How do I see that stuff? So that's one level. Yes,
Is it considered a change if you're adding something?
we'll talk about it in a second. One level above that,
Because half
I'm
the
doing,
siddur should go
I'm doing,
bye-bye.
I'm doing some additions. And like, you know, for example, I'm going to add Tehillim. I'm going to add certain verses, that kind of stuff. Okay, so as long as I'm not dealing with the core, I'm adding some stuff. You know, so for example, the custom is to add Pirkei Tehillim, to add Tehillim before the Mariv in the beginning of Yom Ha'atzmaut. You know, stuff like that. From halachic perspective, there's no issue with that. And from a matter of changing the what we call matbea shel tefillah, the language or the structure of tefillah, we're not really touching it. It's stuff that happens before and later. I'm not making up any texts. Okay, so that's one level. That's actually level 2, right? Level 1, we don't do anything. Level 1, well, level 2, we're doing stuff before and after, but things only from the repertoire, his Tehillim and stuff like that. We're not adding foreign texts, for example, or new stuff. Level 3, we try to, we're not afraid to use the system that we have and give it religious meaning to the holiday meaning. Okay, so for example, Hallel. So we know that Hallel is a prayer that we say on holidays. So therefore, we take the Hallel and we say we're going to say it also on Yom Ha'atzmaut because we consider that as a holiday, and we're going to say it. Okay, debates here and there, whatever, wherever you are on the spectrum, that's discussed with your rabbi. The point is, I'm taking a text that is used elsewhere. It's within my pool, from my repertoire, from my liturgy, and I use it in a new way. Not only for the biblical holidays, etc., or the rabbinic holidays, I use it also for a modern holiday. It's level 3. Level 4, I can insert a personal expression. I can also insert new texts into the tefillah. This is an example. Alanisim is used on Purim and Chanukah. In nature, Yom Ha'atzmaut is similar to those holidays, if you accept it as a holiday, whatever, that kind of stuff, because it's not biblical. And it was established because of a miracle. And if you recognize Yom Ha'atzmaut as a miracle, then, okay, it's a big if. And therefore, I can do something like that. And if you look at that, you can read it on your own time. This is one example. There are a bunch of them, by the way, out there. One example, I put English and Hebrew. One example for a Alanisim that is specifically for Yom Ha'atzmaut. Again, very few communities do that, again, because of resistance to change. And I'm not saying what is right and what's wrong. Every community needs to decide for themselves where they are, level 1, 2, 3, or 4. I think this is 5 already. But be authentic. Be authentic. And don't be afraid to insert something if you really feel that this is the right thing to do. Okay, flip the page. In the same way, it's for Yom Yerushalayim. After the remarkable victory in 1967, what is the significance of that? What do we, is this a holiday? And if so, Miri, you look, yeah, it's a double-sided, guys. Is it a miracle? And if so, is it established as a holiday? And what does it mean that it is established as a holiday, right? And if so, don't be afraid. And there's an example, and again, there are a bunch of them. Ala Nisim, again, that was composed specifically for Yom Yerushalayim, the 28th of Iyar. I don't know many communities that do that stuff. I think that a lot of communities, especially in Israel, feel that way, but they feel that they don't have the right to go to level 5 and insert new texts. Okay, that's fine. But I think that we need to be aware that A, the possibility exists. Number 2, there's stuff out there that can help us make it a relevant, personal, let's call it, experience.
They can't even say it like at the end or something?
You could, but it's then you go back to level 2. The question is, what is the significance in my, how much, like the rabbis, when they instituted Ala Nisim for Hanukkah, they were not afraid to say that's going to be smack in the middle of the Amidah. It's going to be in Modim because it's the same theme. Yes, and we're going to do that. And by the way, in the old days, some communities still do that. Slichot were recited inside the Amidah. There were expansions inside the Amidah. Today, we kind of refrain of doing that, but some communities, especially Central Europe, still do that. That's the old custom. And we talked about the Amidah a lot. In Refaenu, it's almost a standard in Sidurim that there's the Yehi Ratzon that people insert the name of somebody specific. But as I said, we have that flexibility. Halachically, Shulchan Aruch talks about it. We have that flexibility. We refrain of doing that because we're afraid. But the rabbis back then were not afraid to insert Ala Nisim for Hanukkah or Purim. You need to ask yourself, is this justified? Is this on the same level that I can do that? Okay, again, it's for us, for each one of us to decide, or ask your local rabbi. But what I'm saying is we need to ask ourselves those questions. Otherwise, our tefillah becomes irrelevant. Otherwise, we talk about Bavel and we live in Beverly Hills.
Beverly Hills.
Beverly Hills, yeah, correct. Okay. I want to, something that jumped into my feed a couple of days ago from Rab Beni Laut, the next page. Obviously, in the context of Tisha B'Av. So that's a kind of a loose translation of what he wrote. He wrote it in Hebrew, obviously. In just a little while, he wrote it on Tisha B'Av. We will pray Mincha of Tisha B'Av. In the Nachem prayer, so let's just remember the Nachem prayer. The Nachem is a specific prayer addition to the Amidah that we insert only on Tisha B'Av in conjunction with the Bracha of Bnei Yerushalayim, the rebuild of Jerusalem, and the rabbis insert, obviously, for obvious reasons, on Tisha B'Av, that blessing. Okay. So in the Nachem prayer, you know what? I want to do it the other way around. Let's not read what he wrote. Let's read the traditional Nachem for a second. So that's the right side. Hashem our God, okay, in the table. Console the mourners of Zion and the mourners of Jerusalem, just like in the same page. And the city that is in mourning and in ruins, despised and desolate, mourning because she is bereft of her children, ruined of her dwellings, despised in contrast to her former glory, desolate without inhabitants. She sits alone, and her head covered like a barren woman who never gave birth, etc., etc., etc. Okay? Now let's go back to what Rabbi Lau wrote. In the Nachem prayer, we add one word to describe Jerusalem humiliation. The city that, now we make the huge change. That's not him, by the way. That's an older practice. Rav Chaim David Halevi came with that. That was mourning, ruined, disgraced, and desolate. And that's how we change the whole concept, the whole narrative of that prayer. Move it to the past tense rather than the present tense. He said, listen to what he says. But woe to us if we become ungrateful for all that does exist, for the city rebuilt, for a people returned, for a land reborn. We cannot simply recite the Kinot as if we have not returned to Zion, as if our parents did not pass this land down to us, as if the majority of the Jewish people have not made their way home. Yes, there is much to worry about. Things are not perfect, much to cry over. We are in a very difficult chapter, and he wrote it yesterday. In the life of our state, the fog is thick and it clouds our vision of tomorrow. And yet, within all this, we are on a journey of a people who choose life. So there are a bunch. If you actually look for
He sent this to you?
no, he wrote it on Facebook.
Just.
Yeah.
So
What?
it was out there yesterday.
Yeah. And so there, by the way, there are a lot of variations. Rav Chaim David Halevi, very, very, very traditional chief rabbi of Tel Aviv, thought that we need to maintain the form of Nachem. Don't change. Keep it. We're very traditional. However, change the tense from present to past, and it makes a huge difference. It changes the whole narrative. Yes, we acknowledge. Okay, I want to give you another example. Look at the one on the left side. I don't remember who wrote it. I apologize, but there are a lot of versions out there. Console, O Lord our God, the mourners of your sanctuary. Again, it starts the same. And the mourners of, not Zion, but Mount Zion. The focus here is Beit HaMikdash, because Yerushalayim is rebuilt. We're back in the land. Yerushalayim is bigger, stronger, flourishing, vibrant, more than ever in Jewish history.
Yeah.
What are we missing? Harabait, the temple. So let's be honest. He says, this guy says, let's be honest. And that is relevant to Mount Zion, which remains desolate without its children. That is true. But the city itself? The prophets that cries about the destruction of Yerushalayim in his wildest dreams. Actually, he did. Only in his wildest dreams. And he prophesied about עוד יזבו זקנים וזקנות ברחובות ירושלים. he talks about that he wants to see old people in Yerushalayim. You know why? Why old people? Because everybody was murdered when they're young. So a sign of people, older people in Yerushalayim, is a sign that people can live safely. A maidservant has inherited her mistress, okay, and children of Hagar, blah, blah, blah. And we are unable to ascend, to see, and to bow before you in the house of your choosing, the dwelling place along the way, the great and holy house upon which your name was called. Because of our sins, whatever, all that kind of stuff. But the focus, again, is on Har Zion. It's recognizing on one hand that, yes, the redemption is not complete. Har HaBayit, the temple, is still ruined, correct. But the city of Yerushalayim, bigger and stronger than ever. So again, if we are authentic in our tefillot, we need to consider how we're going to handle it. Again, this is a less traditional approach. He changes the text. Rab Chaim David Halevi suggests only change one word in order to put it in the past tense. By the way, Rabbi Shalom has his version of that. And there are a bunch of others. But all those are courageous attempts to look to reality, to look in the eye to reality and say, I'm not going to say that the city is ruined and desolated. It's not. It's just not true. Okay?
The problem is whose version do you choose?
Or whatever you want. And I'm not saying that you need to. If you feel that,
Yeah.
and by the way, a very traditional approach would be,
Everybody.
no, as long as the temple is not built, it impacts the entire city. That's a very, very right wing, let's call it. I don't know, it's not, it's the wrong term, but whatever. Very traditional approach. We're not changing it because it impacts, the whole city is affected by it. Okay, maybe yes, maybe no. What I'm saying is we need to be courageous enough and, okay, moving on. As you can see, I'm like in the Tisha B'Av mode a little bit. I was thinking about that stuff yesterday when preparing. So Tisha B'Av, we sit and we recite Kinot. And what's interesting to me is the fact that the Kinot, even though we commemorate, right, we commemorate the destruction of the temple, blah, 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 but the Kinot themselves, the limitations, are not dealing only with the destruction of the temple. Tons of tragedies throughout Jewish history. The Crusades, the expulsion of Jews from England, the expulsion, the Inquisition in Spain and Portugal, etc., etc. Many, many, many tragedies are memorialized somehow in the Kinot, and the rabbis kind of like throughout the generations decided that that's a day in which we commemorate all those tragedies. Okay. By the way, in the old history, communities had their own memorial days for events that happen in those communities. With time, it's kind of disappeared. My biggest fear is what's going to happen in 100 years from now to Yom HaShoah.
Yeah.
Or even 50 years from now, when we have no survivors and it's kind of far. Is it going to continue and function in a meaningful way?
My fear is that there'll be another one.
Okay, that's a different story. But you know, as an independent day, Memorial Day, as an independent day, I'm not so sure. I think what the rabbis in the past had, the idea that they had back in the past was right. Take all those tragedies and put them into one day. It's Tisha B'Av. It's the day of tragedies throughout history. I think that the right approach would have been to have the Yom HaShoah as part of Tisha B'Av. But in those early years of the state, when you had so many survivors and it was so painful, so fresh, it was unacceptable. And to remind you also, so many of the Israelis were secular, so secular that they didn't want to connect it to Tisha B'Av. They said, we need something special for Yom HaShoah. So I understand, but I'm wondering what's going to happen in 100 years from now.
Even now, not so many people come.
Okay. So they had that, I think that they had the right thing in mind. And my question is, when we sit and we say kinot, and we did it very nicely here, like all the rabbis in the neighborhood, they got together and different rabbis presented different kinot, and they had like a PowerPoint presentation and blah, 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 the whole thing. And I'm wondering, how does it resonate with us? Yes, of course, it's like, the destruction of the temple is but I live in 2025. Yes, the Crusades, I get it, but I live in 2025. So there are attempts to make it relevant. And here is one of the most recent ones. Take a look at the next page. I forgot his full name. I apologize. This is an example. This is not the only one. It's called Kinat Be'eri. That was written after October 7th. Everybody's familiar with what happened in Kibbutz Be'eri? And he wrote a Kinah. And I know that a bunch of shuls actually incorporated that into their liturgy. You can read the translation. It's absolutely, from poetic point of view, it's absolutely gorgeous. And it's in the style of the Kinot. And
he has questioned you.
correct. It's Eicha. Look at the Hebrew. It's exactly like a lot of the Kinot are written with the word Eicha. How come? How come that happened? Okay. Now, there are a bunch of others. By the way, this is not the only one that was written. But I'm saying, if we are authentic in our liturgy, I want to see something like that. Because you know what? If I need to do a program, especially for millennials or teenagers, and I want them to be connected to something, I need this. I'm sorry, but I would put stuff like that more than the traditional kinot. How many shul would do that? And is it that we are, now, let's be honest, kinot is not tefillah.
Right.
There's no obligation to recite. There's no obligation to read, but what's the purpose of reading that stuff? To be inspired, to get into the mood, to understand what we're doing. So we're not going to be sitting and binging, some stupid Netflix TV show on that day. Right? So what do you think is going to be more inspirational for teenagers or even adults today? Something that took place on October 7th, or something that would talk about, Asara Harugei Malchut in the times of the Romans? I'm not saying cut it out, but I'm saying add it or create a balance or highlight or, okay? Okay. Sorry? I want to put fire in everything. If I don't put fire in it, what's the purpose? Why am I doing it for? God? No, that's where we started. I do it for myself. Go to the next page.
Especially now, the Catholics are apologizing for all this stuff they do in the Crusades.
Here's a kina that is more and more incorporated in many in starting to be incorporated more and more places. Terrible story. Rabbi Aller, coming back from one of the camps, I don't remember, after the Holocaust,
Yeah.
coming back from one of the camps, coming back to Warsaw, discovering that his entire family was killed, murdered in the Shoah. And his response was this kina, this lamentation that he wrote. And it's in the style and very similar to the last kina that we say in the morning, Eli Tzion Be'area. And I know that a bunch of places use that as a standard thing and do it in the same melody. You can look at the text, you can look at the English. I'm sure it's not perfect. This is like kind of like a quick translation that
The Hebrew is much nicer.
of the Hebrew is much nicer than all of them. This is just a translation, I'm sorry. But you can see that this is an expression for when somebody learns about the magnitude of the loss during the Holocaust. For me, reading something like that, especially with the backstory, it makes it relevant. I know that Tisha B'Av is about destruction of the temple, but in order for me in 2025 to feel that tragedy, and it's not only the temple, it's tragedies throughout of Israel, of the Jewish people, it's easier for me to connect to something that happened in October 7th, and it's easier for me to connect to something that was written in 1945 as a response to the Shoah.
Also, we have visuals of this stuff, those movies.
Of course, you can do it with visuals, you can do it with a lot of stuff. One of my favorite rabbis, they were in safe environment. Her name is Angela Buckwell. She's a Reform rabbi in Central Synagogue in New York City. She is a superstar, I think. I disagree with her on almost everything, but I think she's a superstar. And she wrote, Angela Buckwell. If you go to Buchwal, I think. Yeah. Yeah, she's actually Korean. She started, like, she converted to Judaism. She started as a Cantor. And then she went to rabbinic school and she became the senior rabbi at Central Synagogue, which is one of the largest.
I presume she converted?
Yeah, I said she converted.
Oh, she did, okay.
The converts. One of the largest Reform congregations in the world, in New York City. Again, we disagree on tons of stuff. Anyway, but I'm sorry. I have no idea. But the point is, the point is, why am I saying that? Because she wrote on social media yesterday that she was in Israel and she went to, the square in Tel Aviv, what we call Kikar HaChatufim, and there was Eicha there. And the different chapters of Eicha were read by families that lost somebody on October 7th. And in the background, when the person read that chapter of Eicha, there was a picture of the victim with the story.
It's here and now.
It's taking the words of Yirmiyahu, talking about the destruction of the temple, and make it very, very real. And isn't that what we want in our rituals, in our religious lives?
Yes, very important.
So maybe it's time that we start doing stuff like that. And it starts with one letter, perhaps, in the Ahava Rabbah, and it continues with whatever. Everybody find their balance. But if we're going to be stuck, okay, this is what we do, we don't change anything and whatever, and just because it was done hundreds of years this way, I'm not saying that we can change, right? Like one of the major, and we spoke about it a lot, the differences is whether to, the imahot, the insertion of the matriarchs in the Amidah. We spoke about that. I don't want to go there. So I'm not talking about like stuff like that represent a theological difference. But there's so much out there, so much liturgy, so much material out there that we can make relevant to us. And again, everybody's different, it's like everybody is like feels different and more to here and more to there and like whatever. But all I'm saying is find your balance and don't be afraid of saying that we're going to, it's this idea of like, no, we're not going to change. We're not going to change no matter what. That's, where it comes from? That's the motto of the Haredi Judaism. That's Chadash Asur Min HaTorah. That's the Khatam Sofer coined that terms. Anything, any change, anything new is prohibited, and it's prohibited on Torah level, which is oxymoron. We said Asur Min HaTorah, right? He did that, but you need to understand where this is coming from. There was a response to the reform. So that was the response. Like, when people wanted to, create new things, break away from whatever, he said, any change, I have to stop the bleed. He said, any change is no matter what. We're not going to look at anything. I think that in his mind, it's something temporary to stop the bleed, because Judaism, like the reform idea was sweeping Europe, like, people, that was right. And he felt that we need to stop the bleed, and therefore everything is no. That's immediate. That's what when you go to a triage, when you go to, it's like, first of all, let's get the patient. Here's the doctor. Let's keep the patient alive, first of all. Then we'll deal with the leg or whatever. So first of all, let's make sure that the heart is pumping. Okay, then we'll deal with the broken bone.
But he didn't say that.
He didn't say that, and not only that,
That's the problem.
hundreds of years later, a lot of people believe that that's the way to go. I'm not saying it's wrong. There's a lot of pluses. There's a lot of value there. But you need to ask yourself whether that is the right thing for you. And if the answer is no, then what does it mean? How it translates in my religious life, that's a whole different story. But how it translates into my tefillah, that's something that we have to ask ourselves. Now, to be honest with you guys, I prepared more stuff, but I think that we're not going to do that. That would have been already the intro to the High Holiday Liturgy, and I wanted to discuss Slichot. We're not going to do that. But what I wanted to say as a beautiful segue, that next time, which is going to be a couple of weeks from now, I don't remember, but we will send an email. The 26th, maybe the 19th. I'm arriving on the 18th, so we can do the 19th.
You'll probably fall asleep.
Forget about jet lag. Let's got good time for that. But my question is, no. If I'm taking the flight
I'm not gonna be here.
on
so
the
I don't
18th,
think
I think I'm arriving on the 18th, so I think we can do probably the 19th. August. So the point is, what I'm saying is, I want to start with the high liturgy, with High Holiday Liturgy, which starts with Slichot. But I just want to give you kind of the definition of slichot, and you see how wonderful if it's a segue. Because slichot are verses, they're prayers, they're piyutim, poems, and that kind of stuff. And it's a custom. It's extra material, right? It's not the Shema. It's not the Amidah. It's not the daily. It doesn't follow the daily tefillot that are structured around the korbanot. It's a custom. There's no, the obligation is not on the same level, not at all, right? And yet, the rabbis throughout the generations said, you know, I want to prepare for that season, the high holidays. So I'm going to come up with poems. I'm going to create some sort of a tefillah, some sort of a service, some sort of a liturgy that is going to get me in the right mindset. What do you think all those piyutim? We're going to talk about piyutim a lot next, because the vast majority of the tefillah, of the high holiday tefillot are piyutim. I bet that almost anything that comes to your mind when you talk about high holiday liturgy, whether it's Untane Tokef or Chila, I don't care, whatever you have in mind, Zochenu, all that stuff is piyutim. It's poems. These are poems written by rabbis and were interjected into the tefillah in order to express something. Correct. So what we did today is also kind of try to expand a little bit and show that, hey, if those rabbis did that, the fact that it happened, hundreds of years ago, does it mean that I'm excluded of doing that for myself? Or I can be inspired and say, hey, they did that. I can do the same thing. Now, I'm not saying that we can go, got to be very careful. I'm not saying that we can go reform or whatever and change what we call matbea shel tefillah, right? The formed structure, the language of the tefillah. I'm not saying that. Okay, I'll be very clear. We're not changing that. But insert or make little changes in the stuff around in order to make it relevant and personal. Ask yourself, and what is your, where do you stand? Level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on each. And by the way, it doesn't mean that I'm level 5 on one thing. I'm going to be on level 5 and on another thing.
Right.
But you know what it means? It means that my tefillah is going to be alive. It's going to be relevant. It's going to be with a spark. I'm going to be inspired by it. And if I want to inspire teenagers or whatever, I think that's the only way to go. We spoke about that. That's my concluding, Tachanun, for example. Tachanun, right? We have those extra supplications. Where it comes from, the Talmud says everybody needs to have their Tachanun. They have their form of supplication after the Amidah. So what do? Everybody's reciting the same text. Everybody's kind of not really, go through the motion. They don't understand what they're saying. And I'm saying to myself, is this what was the intention? You know what Hasidim did? They cut it. They don't say it. Hasidim say, we don't say Tachnun. It doesn't serve the purpose. And you know what I would say? Within even our circles, the Orthodox circles, I know it's recorded, I want to see an individual that says, you know what? I don't get something out of it, of reciting Tachanun. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take 30 seconds for personal reflection, and I'm going to talk to God in my own words for 30 seconds instead of the Tachanun.
The word Tachanun, that's what the meaning is.
What do you think? I get it. So I'm saying we are so, this is the Siddur. Everything is written here. I can't move. I can't change anything. No. If we're going to treat that like the Torah,
That's it.
then it becomes irrelevant.
They're afraid that it's gonna go like reform. That's what they're afraid of.
Are we Are we motivated by fear?
Well, the rabbis.
I think it's time. Look, we live in times where
Very different.
it's very different. And the fact that, but even when I grew up, definitely when some of us grew up, when you, that's because that's the way we do things. It was enough. It was an answer. Today, it's not an answer.
Yeah.
People are like, "Oh, I don't really care." It's like, okay, the fact that you did that doesn't mean anything. There is no such a thing as that's the way we do it. I need to find meaning. I need to understand that it's justified. Otherwise, I'm not doing it.
Right.
Okay, that's the reality, whether you like it or not. So we can continue, turn our head and ignore the problem, or try to say, hey, if we're not going to do something and change our attitude and our trajectory, we're going to be gone. I don't need control. I don't want to control.
Belief has to be controlled.
I want people,
It's inspirational.
It's supposed to feel.
Right.
I need to inspire people and then let them find their expression. It's like when you raise kids. You want your kids to follow your ways. You give them examples, you try, you teach them, you do whatever. At the end of the day, they might take your way, they might take a different way. And you have two options.
Accept or not? Mm-hmm.
So what are you going to do?
Find Shrilas Zahav.
Okay, you find Shrilas Zahav. So unless your kids are criminal, horrible people, whatever, that kind of stuff, I think that the vast majority of people say, okay, he's not going in, my kid is not going my ways, but he's a good, decent, honest, ethical, moral person that has different way of doing things. We're still part of the family, right? And that's what I want in our religious life as well. If I have a certain practice or I say, it doesn't mean that the other one, we're still family. I can do things, he can do things in a different way. He's going to say Hallel, I'm not going to say Hallel in Yom Ha'atzmaut, whatever that is. I'm going to say a thing for Yom Ha'atzmaut, Ala Nisim, and he's not going to do it. So what? But I'm authentic in my practice, and he's authentic in his practice. And the idea is that if I'm authentic, that I'm connected to him. That's all. I'm not doing it for anyone else. I'm doing it for my own connection with God. And the other person needs to do it. It's also their own connection with God as well. And God really doesn't care if I say it or not. I need to care if I say it or not. And what version of it.
Say and keep repeating so we remember and we teach the children or the generation that is coming after.
That's fine. What I'm saying is at some point, there's, we can't be afraid all the time that people are going to do something that is slightly different.
But if you give them a good foundation or give
Maybe yes, maybe no.
Yeah, it depends.
You know how many people that, they like Republicans and their kids became Democrats? So what?
Until they grow up.
Or vice versa. It really doesn't matter. The point is like, we can't, if my, we have to empower, because what's the alternative? Let's go back to our religious life, and especially with the, what's the alternative? People say, you know what? This is not authentic. This is not represent. I'm not connected to that. Forget it. If this is not that, then I'm not. So take this, have a nice life. I'm out. That's the alternative.
Mhm.
to put it, if I understood, it's written, but it's not penetrate you.
It doesn't